much for joining this third video in a series on lessons from a reluctant leader. We've been exploring the life of Gideon and his call into leadership, which he didn't feel he was worthy of, his response in the second video around how he garnered support and how he brought an army, and the crazy question that God asked him to do with those numbers. And in this video, we're going to talk about squad selection. You see, God goes even a step further in thinning out the herd for Gideon, and there are such powerful lessons in that. Thank you for watching. So in the previous video, we saw that Gideon garnered the support of 32,000 people, although his enemy is about 135,000, so significantly more numbers than he has. And God said, no, the ones who are scared, send them home. 22,000 people leave. He's left with 10,000. And then God says something ridiculous. He says, Gideon, there's still too many. They're 13 times less than the enemy. And God says, Gideon, you still have too many people. I need you to do another test. I need you to thin them out even more. And what God asks Gideon to do is so incredible. And there's such a powerful principle in this that I'd love to share with you. If you've been watching this far, thank you so much for sticking it out. If you like my content, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, a notification bell, or please drop something for me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I can improve or what you would like me to do next. Thank you for lending me your ears. It's an absolute pleasure. So here we go. God says, Gideon, take the people to the water. And I want you to take note of who drinks in which way. So in Judges 6 and 7 again, we pick this up. The 10,000 people are taken to the water. And Gideon is standing there watching them drink. And there are only two kind of ways the guys go to the water. There's one group that kind of bends down on one knee and takes their hand, scoop water and bring it to their mouth. And then there's the other grouping that are kind of on their knees, hands on the mud, pushing their faces into the water and just sucking up the water. And God says, split them into those two groups. And he says, the ones that bent down and put their faces into the water, send them home. Now you would have expected that this would be like a 50-50, right? So the 10,000 men become 5,000, or maybe if we take the previous thinning, we lose 2/3, which means we lose 6,000. So we're still left with like 3,400 or so. Not the case at all. 300 people remain. God says, Gideon, this is your team. And this 300 people, I want you to go up against an army of 135,000 with these 300 men. What? Can you imagine the fear and anxiety that Gideon must be sitting with? God calls him out of cowardice and says, arise, brave warrior. And then he's like, oh wow, this is working, right? You've got my dad to stand up for me. You've got 32,000 people that have come to support me. And now, after a couple of days, you've sent 31,700 of them home. Can you imagine as a leader how anxious you must be to say, well, the task has remained the same. It is a mammoth task. It is a behemoth mountain that lies before me as a leader. And God has told me to do this with 300 people. That just sounds absurd. There's a brilliant video by Simon Sinek about his discussions with Navy SEALs and how they do squad selection on a matrix of competency versus trust, which is brilliant, and I'll drop the link in the description below. I think it creates a powerful framework to understand what's going on with Gideon and the 300. But there's something else that God is introducing into the discussion that I think is so powerful. And that is, what is the difference between these two groups in how they drink water? And why does that matter? It seems like such an arbitrary way to use to differentiate between those you're sending and those that stay. But I think there's something else there. I think there's a powerful principle that we shouldn't miss. You see, the ones that bend down into the water for that moment are so consumed by their own physiological needs. They're so overwhelmed by their thirst that all their energy and focus is drawn into addressing their own challenges. The other 300 show something very different. There's a different posture in the way that they approach this issue. You see, by bending down, they are able to keep their gaze up. And so while they are fulfilling their own needs of drinking water, they are keeping their eyes focused on the objective. They are alert. They are fully engaged, not in fulfilling their own needs, but in fulfilling their duty as soldiers. Isn't that incredible? And God says, Gideon, with 300 people that are bought into the mission and that have come into submission, even if they have their own needs, their needs will never take precedence. It will never become overwhelming because they are focused on the objective. With those 300 men, you can do so much more than you can do with 10,000 that are distracted and focused on their own desires and needs. They are not worth 15 men. But these 300, they are worth multiples of themselves. It's almost like the mighty men of David back in the discussion. And perhaps this was the prequel to the mighty men of David. And so when we as leaders are confronted with a new mission, our squad selection is so important. Because there's often going to be a lot of people who come into our space and say, yo, that sounds great. But if you ask me whether I really believe, probably 22,000 of them are going to go home and say, well, it's nice to hear, and it's nice to be part of the vibe, but I'm not really convinced. And if I have to put my life on the line, I'm not going to be willing to do that. And then there's this other grouping that says, I'm willing to commit. I'm willing to put my life on the line for this mission. But there's going to be a point where I say, you ask too much. My need is going to be overwhelming. And so I might be one of those guys where I get a cut on the arm and I stop fighting and I rather lay down beneath this dead body strewn all over the place. I do just enough. But I will never give you my full commitment. I will never be the man with the white knuckles on the hand on his sword that fights 10,000 by himself. That's just not who they are. And Gideon's ability to discern that with God's help, empowered by the Spirit of God, is so empowering to say, once again, it's not about the numbers. It's about seeing through the individual to understand their intent. Why are you here? What is your objective? And as leaders, I think if we recognized that we could do so much more with a lot less people, if they were bought in, if they were committed, if they were focused on the objective no matter what. They were not distracted, they were not pulled aside by other sideshows, but focused on the objective. And I hope in your season, where you are in leadership, do not get distracted by people who want to buy into the dream because of the benefit it has for them. But may you discover the discernment to distinguish who is really bought into the mission and who will serve that mission even at their own expense. Because with those people, you really can move mountains. In the last video, we talk about the incredible fight that Gideon sets up for with these 300 men and the miracles that happen in that space. I hope that you'll join me for the last video. Thank you.